Hi, I'm Bob Mahoney, President and CEO of Belmont Savings Bank. You're about to watch a video of a presentation we put together about nonprofits and fundraising for nonprofits. Now you're probably asking the question, why is Belmont Savings Bank leading a discussion about fundraising? Well, the answer is simple. Nonprofits are a very important part of our community. Through health services, human services, education, they touch virtually every life in the Commonwealth. Secondly, they're a big part of the economy of our state. And finally, at Belmont Savings Bank, we have a real focus on nonprofits with dedicated service, terrific interest rates, complete 100% deposit insurance, and from time to time, opportunities like this to share some thoughts and some ideas about how to better your business. So for this particular discussion, we brought together 4 of the most outstanding fundraisers in Massachusetts to share their best fundraising ideas with you. So I hope you find this helpful, and I hope as you think about your banking needs, you'll think of Belmont Savings Bank. Enjoy the show.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Carolyn Jones. I'm the market president and publisher of the Boston Business Journal. And on behalf of our marvelous host, Belmont Savings Bank, and everyone at the BBJ, welcome to our conversation this morning, Taking Your Nonprofit to the Next Level. It promises to be a great conversation with some amazing folks, so you're sure to come away with great ideas both for your business, for your nonprofit, wherever you are in the spectrum of business. I know you're going to come away with some great ideas. We and our partner this morning, Belmont, are really honored to have all of you here today, and it's really an important discussion and of huge significance to the Boston business community. To our partner, Belmont Savings Bank, we want to thank them for their partnership and for putting this program together today. They really did pretty much all the work. We just kind of helped make it happen. The venue is great, and we do want to thank Waltham Woods for having us today. It's a great location, and our panel, of course, is truly dynamic. And I'd like to thank today's panelists, and I'm just going to give you a little intro of each of them. Kathleen Driscoll from the Archdiocese of Boston, Barry Schrage of the Combined Jewish Philanthropies of Greater Boston, Josh Kraft of the Boys and Girls Club of Boston, and Jack Connors of Camp Harborview. And of course, our esteemed moderator this morning, Bob Mahoney from Belmont Savings. So now we're going to get things started. I'm going to introduce you to this morning's panel, and as I introduce each of you panelists, you can just come on up and take your seat if you don't mind. Now I'll kind of do it in order. I'll do it in order like this, and I'll take the piece of paper off your seat when you get there. First is Kathleen Driscoll. Kathleen is the Secretary of Institutional Advancement at the Archdiocese of Boston. Kathleen leads Boston Catholic Development Services, an independent shared services organization with a mission to foster and elevate philanthropic support for the Archdiocese and other Catholic entities. Boston Catholic Development currently raises $25 million annually, and her experience of over 30 years in the corporate world has given her strong expertise in strategic marketing and communications, brand building, sports marketing, and sales development, including time at Hill Holliday and John Hancock. So please welcome Kathleen. Come on up. You can get right over there. Next, please welcome Barry Schrage. Barry is the Not doing anything, okay. I was touching the screen, I was afraid I was wrecking it. Barry Schrage is the president of Combined Jewish Philanthropies of Greater Boston, a role he's held since 1987. CJP promotes inclusion and supports the needs of Boston's diverse community, including isolated seniors, families who are in financial distress, immigrants, people with disabilities, interfaith families, and GLBT Jews. As one of Israel's most passionate and effective advocates, Barry helped to create the Boston-Haifa Connection, a sister city relationship that has resulted in mutually beneficial social programs and productive partnerships. He's also been the driving force behind CJP's Birthright Israel Campus initiative. So welcome, Barry, and thank you for coming. Next is Josh Kraft, the president and CEO of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Boston. Josh Kraft, sorry, there's a little typo there. Josh Kraft, the president and CEO, is in his 27th year of serving youth at the Boys and Girls Club of Boston. Prior to accepting his current role, he was the founding executive director of the Boys and Girls Club's Gerald and Darlene Jordan Club in Chelsea. Concurrently, Josh is the president of New England Patriots Charitable Foundation, where he oversees numerous initiatives such as Game Change, the Patriots Anti-Violence Partnership, the Community MVP Awards, and Celebrate Volunteerism. So welcome, Josh, and thank you. And last but certainly not least, Jack Connors, Jr., the co-founder and chairman of Camp Harborview. Early in his career, Jack became interested and active in the philanthropic life of the city of Boston, serving on boards and leading civic campaigns. In fact, throughout Greater Boston, Jack is known for these efforts as well as for his business acumen. Everyone knows Jack, I think. Camp Harborview is arguably the charity that is closest to Jack's heart. When the late Mayor Tom Menino asked for his help in identifying a solution for the problem of unattended children and teens experiencing boredom and violence during the summer months, Jack proposed that he raise enough money to build a summer camp on Long Island in Boston Harbor, and Camp Harborview was born. And I'm sure we'll hear more about that today. So welcome, Jack, and thank you very much. And now, of course, to introduce our esteemed moderator this morning, Bob Mahoney, who is the president and CEO of Belmont Savings Bank and our host for today. Bob will be moderating the conversation. Bob is president and CEO of Belmont Savings Bank, and prior to joining Belmont in 2010, Bob held senior positions at Citizens Bank and Bank of Boston. Bob has 46 years commercial banking experience and is leading Belmont in all of its growth and change. So, Bob, welcome and take it on.
Thank you, Carolyn. Esteemed is a wonderful word. It's a code word for old. But I'm thrilled to be here and thrilled to be working with this fabulous panel. And thank you all for joining us. We have over 200 organizations represented today, from Mass General to the Cat Connection and everything in between. So I guess we've the Cat Connections over here. It's obviously an interesting topic. It's an important topic in Massachusetts. The nonprofit industry in Massachusetts is an extraordinary part of the economy. There are 30,000 nonprofits in Massachusetts. Basically, 1 out of every 30 companies in Massachusetts is a nonprofit, and we're really sort of the leader in the country. New York State has about twice as many nonprofits as we have, but they have 3 times as many people. So on a per capita basis, this is the nonprofit capital of the country. The other thing about Massachusetts is the people in Massachusetts are philanthropic. $6 billion was given to Massachusetts nonprofits last year, and that number goes up by 2 or 3% every year. So it's a very generous population, and it's a wealthy population. There are 16,000 people who make more than $1 million a year in Massachusetts. That's up 50% from just 5 years ago. The income disparity that comes with that is another issue, but there's 16,000 people who can be very generous. And what's interesting also is that on average they give to 8 different organizations. So you're in a market with a lot of money, a lot of wealth, people who give across the board. And what's also interesting is they believe in you. In a recent survey by State Street Bank, they found that only 50% of the wealthy people in Massachusetts thought that the government could solve society's problem. They thought 87% of them thought you could solve society's problems. So I'm surprised the government did as well as they did, frankly, in that survey. But so you've got a case where plenty of money, plenty of wealthy people, they give, they care about you, they believe in you, and the problem is there's a lot of you. And so today we're going to try to get some opportunities for you to up your game in terms of fundraising, and I couldn't think of a better panel to help you do that. I didn't do a complete audit of this group, but I'm guessing that in total they've raised a lot of money. Money that starts with B's, not M's, okay? So, but they didn't always start raising $100 million at a time. In a lot of cases it was $10,000, $5,000 at a time. So I think they can talk to the whole audience. So with that, I'm going to go in turn, and I've asked them to try to come up with 2 or 3 ideas that they are particularly proud of from their fundraising experiences. So you might benefit from that. And I'm going to start with Kathleen Driscoll from the Archdiocese.
Great.
Kathleen?
Thanks, Carolyn, and thanks, Bob. Any of you heard, I have a communications and marketing background, so I've only been in development for about 10 years. And the person on the stage who drew me into development was Jack Connors, when another very close to his heart entity began, which was the Campaign for Catholic Schools. And so the areas that I'm going to focus on come from my experience where coming into nonprofits, how well are you messaging? How well are you listening to your donors? And how well are you then leveraging that to distinctively position yourself? Because the truth is, many of us are doing similar things. okay, and looking for the same dollars. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples. The church is a large place, and Boston Catholic Development Services has to work with and wants to work with many of the entities. One of the ones that I'll give you an example of is Catholic Charities. Catholic Charities has a teen center in the Bowdoin, Geneva neighborhood of Dorchester, which is the #1 neighborhood for gang violence and deaths in the city of Boston. So they came to us and said, we need to do some fundraising. They had actually very little that was going on in terms of the profitability of that, revenue, I should say, on what was going on for the teen center. So we brought business leaders together. Not many of them had ever been to the teen center. It's not a place you're just going to go drop by in the middle of the day. It's an after-school program and summer program, 10 in the morning, 10 at night. So we had to do something very distinctive because also their unique positioning is who they serve, Cape Verdean youth. So what's going on with Cape Verdean youth? Cape Verdean youth had the highest propensity to join gangs in that neighborhood during that time. Not the Haitian culture, but the Cape Verdean culture. So that is their focus. They also compete though, and I use the word compete, with the Boys and Girls Club for the work that they do as well, right, in Dorchester, helping kids. So how did we position them uniquely? We put together a pamphlet and totally bought Bowdoin, Geneva to the event. And what I mean is, we had the hall of the Archdiocese Cathedral of the Holy Cross. It's not, well-to-do area, very simple. And on the floor, we totally mapped out the neighborhood. We put black dots for the number of kids who had been killed. We put red dots for the number of shootings that there had been. And then we had yellow stars throughout the floor. And the title of the message was, "Where you live shouldn't determine whether you live." Okay? So we first had to set a message of what these young kids were going through every day, just trying to get to the teen center, let alone getting out the door. So here's an example. Everybody came on the floor. No one knew what these dots meant. And these were placemats on everybody's place. So we had to build credibility of why this was great. We had incredible speakers. We had Jack Connors hosting it. We had Cardinal Sean O'Malley. But our credibility speaker was the commissioner, Bill Evans. And Bill Evans spoke about the importance of this place. It is a beacon of hope. And if it hadn't been there, where would we be? Maybe the yellow stars wouldn't be yellow anymore. So that's where marketing comes in. And the message was then, we had some great things. Number one, for the young girls there, we didn't have one teen pregnancy. Number two, not one of the children in the teen center had ever been members of a gang. Had they all witnessed deaths? Yes, family members, friends, whatever. So we created the reality of what was going on. From there, we took a book out of the Campaign for Catholic Schools and started to do tours during areas. And I tell you, there's a lot of CEOs that didn't really want to go in there. We said, we'll pick you up, we'll bring you over there, you'll meet the kids, and we'll get you home safely, okay? So that is what we created, and it was really from a marketing and positioning. The goal of the event was $100,000. We raised $435,000, okay? It meant follow-up, not from the commissioner, not from Jack Connors, and not from the cardinal, but from the team. So the team had to follow up with everybody who came. They were incredibly touched. We got press out of it. The cardinal blogged about it. So we have a cardinal who was the first cardinal ever to blog. He's awesome. So we say, get it out there, get that message. So it's all the marketing around it that definitely helped. And from the $435,000 that we raised, we did it in about 2 months. We locked in all of those pledges. And 3 of them became multi-year because they understood that one-time gift wasn't going to do it. So that gave us the beginning of a major gift effort that started as just a small event, okay? That's the first one I'm going to give you. The second quick example is our annual fund for the Archdiocese of Boston. I don't think I have to talk about the reality of what the church has been through in the last 14 years. But one of the greatest assets that we have, and I mean that asset in a positive way for marketing, is Cardinal Sean O'Malley. And when he came into the scene, he was able to rebuild trust after the abuse scandal and start to bring back the faithful in many ways. We were impacted on so many levels. I can't even tell you the numbers, but 100,000 donors down to about 10 the following year after the abuse scandal. So the annual fund has been creeping along. This is all about messaging and listening to your donors. So we have a renewal. We know that retention is very, very important for nonprofits. You have to retain the current donors. It's worth it putting a lot of time and effort there. and it's a lot less expensive than acquisition. So in retention, we had to also get them to come back. So in our appeal, we began to send our renewal letters out in what we call the advance phase. And that letter always comes from Cardinal Sean. It's very direct mail, basic. But we ask for prayer intentions, okay? And they're anonymous. People write lots of things. Well, we started to get more and more and more of them as we started to do this. And last year, we took the prayer intentions and put them into categories. This would be gold, really, for a for-profit. The 3 things that people wanted us to pray for: opioid and addiction for family and friends. Number 2, the youth. How's the faith going to be continued with the youth? These people believed in God, believed in the Catholic faith. Where was that going to be for the next generation? And the last was their personal health. We have an aging donor base. And also for the younger families, taking care of their parents. So our message then in the appeal, in our annual giving that followed right after that, we highlighted the 3 things that we do as church for that. We have an addiction recovery program that works for pastoral and pastoral care for families, and also we refer them to the right treatment places. And if there is addiction, we also there isn't a church in the Archdiocese of Boston that doesn't have an AA program running 2 to 3 nights a week. So we are in this business relative to helping it on a pastoral level. Youth formation and leadership programs that we're doing throughout the Archdiocese. And the last was we have a parish nursing program. It was a brand new program we started a couple of years ago. And people said, who the heck would ever want to go to a church to find a nurse? Well, there's a lot of shut-ins. And there's a lot of elderly people that do not have family around. And this nurse, or he or she, goes to visit, they pray, and they take their vitals. And if they don't see something that seems right on the health, they can come back and tell someone at the parish, maybe the pastor. It's a relationship. It's a community. From that, the results of what we had is we had a 20% increase in donations, and over 2 years, in focusing our message back to what they cared about, was a 50% growth in 2 years, just on donations. And we had a 19% growth in donor retention, and over the past 2 years, we've had a 43% retention of the donors. So it's just tying the message and what they care about to the work that we do. So those are my examples.
I think that's such an important message. So often a fundraiser is talking to the would-be donor about what the fundraiser is interested in, what the organization's about, as opposed to saying, what's important to you?
Right.
And what do you care about? What do you think about when you think about your philanthropic activities? And start with their interests and needs as opposed to where you're coming from, and try to craft your message around their needs as opposed to making them listen to your needs, whether or not it's relevant. Well, Barry, you've done this for a little bit. CJP, one of the most successful fundraising organizations in the country. Tell us a couple of your best ideas.
God's help actually goes a very long way in
Power of prayer.
any enterprise. Prayer helps provide God's help, and really I've been extremely fortunate in my job. I love it. It's been a lot of fun for 30 years. But how 30 years went by is sort of a little bit of a mystery to me. It's kind of goes by real fast. So let me just say a couple of things. First of all, I'm humbled to be talking to all of you. All of you know a great deal. Every one of our jobs is different. I can't tell you what to do. It's so personal. It's so retail. It's so one person at a time, understanding them and helping them to understand you. So take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. But there are a couple of things that I think are basic, and they go a bunch of different ways. So I don't want to think, and I don't want my team to be thinking about our primary mission being raising more money than last year. I don't think that's, the donors pick that up, and what does that really mean? I mean, our goal is not to raise more money than last year, and all of you know it, our goal is to do more good than last year. Our goal is to change the world. Our goal is somehow or other to find those things where we can really make a huge difference. And this makes a difference to the donors, because what do we give the donors in return for all that they give us? What we give them is the possibility of purpose and meaning in their lives. And for a lot of donors, that really means being able to see how you make change. I had an old friend passed away a few years ago. His name was Michael Hammer. He wrote Re-Engineering the Corporation. And he had a phrase that he used all the time. It It was from Alice in Wonderland. By the way, it might feel like our jobs are very similar to Alice in Wonderland frequently, but what he said was, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. So this is sort of like, what is the approach to donors? First of all, what is the balance between listening and shaping attitudes and gifts? We're not in the business of taking gifts for anything we can get gifts for. We're in the business of walking in with some kind of vision, some kind of sense of purpose. What are our organization's most important goals? What's the ultimate goal? So all of the great things that you're doing, that's great, but in a way, if you're the church, the purpose of this thing is to create a community under God that's related to the spiritual message of the church. That's what people are waiting to hear. They want to know that the church can provide that. That's why it was so important to start with Cardinal O'Malley and a clean church, a beautiful church, a church that could potentially provide wisdom and a future for the folks who are in the pews. And also, by the way, not just for those who are in need, but for the philanthropists themselves. The idea of being connected to a great enterprise, to an important enterprise, to an enterprise that can change the world. It's no secret that job one is relationships. Nothing is more important than relationships. And those relationships have to be genuine. They have to feel, and they have to not just feel, but it has to be true that you're not just there to talk to them about their money. You're there to hear about their families and their troubles and what's on their minds. And this is a great country. It provides, for the Jews in particular, it gave us freedom and freedom from anti-Semitism and a place where you could earn a living and a place where you could live free and all the rest of that. Jews came from places where that wasn't necessarily the case. But there are things that this country can't provide. It can't provide community. It can't provide a sense of meaning and purpose. It can't provide a sense that we can do better together and that we can really change and improve the world. That's why people trust government less than they trust us, but they want us to be able to provide those things. And at the heart of it is a sense of relationship. So, and this is interesting or difficult or whatever, and this is a question of our personalities, you really have to love the people that you're talking to. You really have to care about them. You have to be able to go back to a person after they've lost a great deal of money and can't give you a whole lot. You have to go back to them every single year and tell them that you value them and that you love them. Because guess what? The word's going to get out. If you don't do those kinds of things, word gets out and they know that you're not sincere and that you don't really care. I think in the job that I do, among the most important things that I do is go to funerals and make shiva calls, which is what Jews do to. It's like a wake, I guess, visiting the people who've had a loss. And your ability to convey to them that you really care about them is. Sometimes go to a shiva call and I'm thinking the children must be thinking, wow, you took my parents' money and now you're coming here to, and the amazing.
That never happens. That never happens, Barry.
Well, actually, it doesn't happen. It really doesn't. People really, they appreciate the community being there, and they communicate, and they appreciate their parents tied to the community. So I think it's all about relationships. It's about knowing who you are. What's your charity's main goal? What is it that you have to offer that can offer your donors a sense of greater meaning and purpose in their lives? How do you build out of that base of people that you have a relationship with, a network? One of my favorite books is The Tipping Point. How do you build networks of people who are connected to each other? How do you create a sense of community among your donors so that they reinforce each other and they feel like some of the greatest things we do? You talked about the trip you took with people to visit. The people on those buses, when we take people to Israel they come back and they're best friends, and some of those are their best friends for life. So you're beginning to have networks where it's not just the personal relationship that you have; it's the personal relationship that all those people have with each other, and that can be so powerful. So. I guess that if I was gonna come up with 3 ideas, it's 1, love your donors and have a strong relationship and really care about them. And number 2, really build those networks. And number 3, you love your donors and you love the purpose of your organization. I mean, you've got to feel in your heart and in your gut that those things can really make a difference. And I would say that just one final thing. There's a great book by Howard Gardner called Leading Minds. And in it, he talks about the importance of storytelling. And what you're really doing is you're telling them a story about yourself. It's your life. When I'm talking to a donor about disabilities, I'm talking about people in my family. I'm talking about things that I've gone through. I'm listening to them for the things that they've gone through. And Leading Minds is a great book. I recommend it. It's about how your story reflects something incredibly important. He actually has this metaphor where he says it's like in telling the story, you're taking them on an adventure in which you have obstacles to overcome and in which they are the heroes in this story along with you building the future. The story you told about the future of the church was a great story. You had things to overcome, and yet the goal was so important and so large that you invited people to join you on a journey to revitalize the church. That's an amazing story. I have the best job in the whole world, and I'm hoping that you also feel that way about the work that you do.
Barry, that's wonderful. You know, the notion of getting a donor to feel like a hero in this journey with its challenges, and the notion of loving donors. I think all of us who've given like to give when they feel like they're respected and liked as humans, not as ATM machines. And I just feel much more closer to people who I think they actually like me as a person. And oh, by the way, I'm helping the organization. That's a rare skill, to love a lot of people and show that love. And it's a great message. Thank you very much.
Just out of curiosity, what would you know about ATM machines?
I've supported them for many years. Josh, you've been leading the Boys and Girls Club very successfully for many years.
Definitely. And
Awesome.
just as Barry said, thank you all for coming out. You're all professionals in your own right, and we all appreciate the time. And Bob, thank you for having me. It's great to be here with Kathleen, who I know her stellar reputation. Barry, who was my mother's brother from another mother, my uncle. And of course, Jack, and he'll understand this. I wouldn't be up here if it wasn't for Jack. So thank you all for being here. So I'll start really, and it sort of carries through a couple of the themes we just heard. It's all about, for us at Boys and Girls Club, we hammer away. Our most important thing we can do is stewardship. And we want every single donor, no matter the size of their gift, from $100 to $100,000, and larger and smaller than 100. We want every person who gives to feel good about giving. We want them to walk away and feel good about giving, because every gift makes an impact, and we appreciate every gift. And to that end, we like to say we want every single donor to feel like the kids that walk into our building every day and their families, that they belong, that they're making an impact, and this is a community that they can feel a part of and enjoy being a part of. So through stewardship, one of the things that's very important to all of us at Boys and Girls Clubs of Boston then is the human contact, the human connection. Again, Barry referenced it, in genuine care for your donors. So do everything from phone calls. I'll make phone calls for gifts over $5,000 or more. Our Champion Society will make phone calls to anybody who makes a gift. And most times it's pretty easy, because I don't mean this negatively, but most people, you end up leaving a voicemail, but it comes back when you see them. They say, hey, thanks for the call, Personal notes on letters. I know for us, we're pretty strong about my role, the CEO role, signing every single letter for donations of $1,000 or more. So I will do that, and I try to do something personal. If I don't know the person, it's a little tougher, but on the, you sign it and then you put something personal. But I just think that's really important, because you want people, after they write you a check, to walk away feeling good about their investment in your work, in your mission, in whatever it is you're all whatever mission you all are representing. So that's very important. Personal notes too, especially around milestones. For instance, a couple of people that were not marginally, but aren't fully engaged with our organization. I know I just sent a couple notes out to some 40 under 40 winners in the BBJ, a little plug for the BBJ, but And so it's just that kind of stewardship, make people feel like they matter. And for us, it's easy. We just say we make people feel like the kids and the families that come into our buildings and use our program every day. So the phone calls. Another thing we do is we have Boys and Girls Club baby bibs, and it says future members. So whenever anybody has a kid, a baby or a grandbaby, we love to send them a bib, and they're actually it's not a big expense to buy the bib. So just another touch. And again, we have a lot of those other where you make that human connection, because in the end, I know I keep saying it, but it really is, for us, it's the key for us. We want people who give to us to walk away feeling good about giving to us and feeling like they matter and they're part of the community that Barry referenced. Another idea, it's a little easier at Boys and Girls Club, is getting people to see our mission live. And obviously, you bring people into the club building. And there's a funny story, we just had somebody do a book on our 125 years, and when we were building the club in Chelsea, we were in the old Chelsea High School, which, the ceiling was about 9 feet high, it was crowded, we were in old locker rooms there. And we started to do a campaign to build a building, and a donor came, and he had said, I'm going to give you $10,000, but I want to just see, I want to see what you're doing and where the new site is. And he came, and actually at that time I wasn't, to this day I say he screwed up, but maybe I screwed up, but I wasn't there. But he strolled in, and a woman who was a social worker and doing program director was there, and he watched her for 10 minutes. He called me, he said, well, you screwed up the meeting, but I'll tell you what, I saw what you all were doing in that small space, so I'm going to go from $10,000 to $50,000. So obviously it's easier for us, we can bring people into our buildings, but the other way we can do that is our alums. And another story is after our annual dinner one year, a couple of very prominent business leaders, it wasn't the guy sitting on my right, but other prominent, well-known business leaders who you would all know, grabbed me after the dinner because we had an alum speak and say, it's awesome hearing alums because they're paying taxes, using our products, voting, they're part of our community. And so we've always tried to include alums in all, if we can't bring people to the building, we try to bring alums to house parties or whatever it is we're doing. So stewardship, making people feel great about giving and feeling a part of their community, like the kids in our buildings, and get the mission to the people any way you can, or to your potential investors and donors. So thank you.
I think the notion of helping the donors see a beneficiary of your work is so important. In your case, the alum from the club. And all of us are helping people or animals or somebody. And to the extent the donor can be exposed directly to the beneficiaries of your work, I think it's incredibly powerful. I do a small scholarship up at UMass, and every year the two women who win the scholarship have lunch with me. And I couldn't stop that scholarship in 1,000 years.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the most fun I have all year long, is talking to these juniors and seniors about what their future is, and they're so energized and so excited and so thankful. I mean, it's perfect. A thank you note is great, but that's powerful. And all of you have beneficiaries who could be your ambassadors, I think, to help your story. Speaking of ambassadors, Jack has probably worked with more organizations and given to more organizations than anybody else in town. So you can speak from a philanthropic as well as from a fundraising standpoint. Jack, tell us some thoughts.
Well, Bob, thanks for calling on me just before lunch. I appreciate it. To be honest with you, I'm still steaming over the fact that you've been recognized as esteemed when Barry and I are older than you, and we got nothing,
Extremely esteemed.
So, at the end of the day, I'm a salesman. I've been a salesman all my life, and I love being a salesman. I love the hunt. I love asking for money for good causes. Let's talk about good causes for a moment. There was a mentor of mine who created an advertising agency back in the late 40s, early 50s. Bill Bernbach from Doyle Dane Bernbach. And as some of you know, I was in the advertising business. I helped start Hill Holiday when I was 25. And so I needed a mentor. I've been 49 and a half years without a boss. And he said, nothing kills a bad product faster than a great ad. So just think about that. What you sell has to be good. And obviously, as you sense from my three predecessors, you have to believe in it. And you have to want it to be successful. You have to be part of what's being built. And I mean, Josh has been at this since he was a kid. He chose to be of service to others when he graduated from college. And so he worked for the Boys and Girls Club at Chelsea. He wasn't always the CEO of the Boys and Girls Club. So when he became CEO, he knew everything that needed to be done and what he wanted to do when he became the leader. The same with Barry. Barry believes, I had no idea Barry was Jewish, to be honest. and Kathleen is a woman of faith. So when they go and when each of these three asks for money, they ask for something that they represent with a great deal of credibility, with belief to their core. As a salesman, I will just maybe give you a couple of thoughts from my perspective. As Barry said, this is just my story. This is not necessarily transferable to you. But just think of the millions of dollars that each of us collectively have spent in developing the brochure, the annual report, the proposal. I read a fair amount. I've never read anybody's proposal. It goes right in the trash. Excuse me, it goes in the file. As a salesman, as a salesperson, it's all about interpersonal skills, interpersonal relationships. When I was a younger advertising man, I occasionally created one or two enemies in the world, maybe as many as three. And one of the lessons I learned is I could never sell anything to someone who didn't like me. So I decided that I was going to make a change, and I wanted everyone to like me. I've yet to be successful, but I've been relatively successful. And so I think it's all about, and you've heard this said in so many other ways, you're selling yourself. 12 years ago, the then mayor of the city of Boston, Tom Menino, called me and he said, "Get down to my office." And I said, "Do you mind if I ask why?" And he said, "Just get down here, I got a problem." And so I went down to see him, and he said, "There's a bunch of kids who are not having the kind of summer that we had when we were kids. Their parents have to keep them in the apartment until they get home from work, or in some cases unsuccessfully dodging bullets in some of the neighborhoods in the city." So I did a little inquiry, and I remember that my mother and father had brought my sister and I out to the Long Island Hospital for the Poor, probably in the late 40s, early 50s. And I remembered a field. This is part of my faith, by the way. I don't remember what I had for breakfast 2 days ago, but I remember this field, and it was 55 years since I visited this field. So I went down the expressway, got out off at Neponset, went out towards Wallaston Beach, took a left at the Dunkin' Donuts, went out to Squantum, and it's like going to Waltham for me,
Good point.
Same currency, Jack. The same currency here, actually.
And went out to, there was a security gate because the first island, Moon Island, is a police pistol range. So I made up a story and went out, which I do quite often. And I got approval to go out to Moon Island and across a bridge to Long Island. And there was, at the end of Long Island, now I'm 4.5 miles out in the ocean, there was one of these kind of horses, I guess they call them, do not enter. So of course I entered and lifted the horse, drove in, dusty road, went out and saw this field. And it turned out, I had no idea, it was an Army base at one point during World War II. It was called Fort Strong. And it was to protect the city right at the mouth of the harbor from any German warships or submarines. They laid mines and nets. And it lay fallow for at least 50 years. So I did a little homework, found out that it belonged to the Defense Department, the Army, et cetera, et cetera. Went to the federal government, went to the state, went to the city. So I called the mayor and I said, do you have any cars with blue lights? And he said, oh, I got a lot of those, you know. So I asked him to pick me up, and we went for a ride. And by the time I got out there, it's like a scene from Godfather 1, you know, leave the gun, bring the cannoli, you know. We're 4.5 miles out. It's early November. The wind is blowing. It's cold. And I said, this property belongs to you. I want you to give me 30 acres. It's about 240 acres out here. At the end of the island, I want you to give me 30 acres. I'll pay you $1 a year, give me a 30-year lease. And I'll build you a camp and raise $10 million, having no idea how to do either of those two things. And he said, I'll never forget this. He said, you're crazy. And I said, you called me. So he introduced me to a young man with a growing business by the name of John Fish, who built the place in 110 days. And I didn't keep my promise. I promised I'd raise $10 million, and so far we've only raised $88 million. And it's just a reminder that what you know, that everything is possible. You just have to believe in it. Next point, if I may. When I was a young advertising person, the rule of thumb in marketing was the 80-20 rule. We've all heard of it. 20% of the donors give 80% of the money. 20% of the beer drinkers drink 80% of the beer. Schaefer Beer in those days built a slogan on that, the one beer to have when you're having more than one. I was a beneficiary of that line. That was 50 years ago. Forget about the 80-20 rule. The new rule in fundraising, with the exception of things like the Pan Mass Challenge or the Jimmy Fund, the new rule is 93. Everything's changed. 3% of the donors give 90% of the money. So, I mean, nobody knows that better than the folks to my left. So, we've all heard the expression, you have to kiss a lot of frogs to find a prince. Find the best looking frogs you can before you kiss them. Right? The ones with the highest net worth before you kiss. And by the way, bring some lip balm.
I see a lot of note-taking going on.
Yeah.
He has a small concession for lip balm. For the salesman. Thank you very much. Fascinating. I want to ask a couple of sort of practical questions for the panel. Everybody here has done fundraising dinners, been involved with fundraising dinners. You folks have done dozens of them. One or two tips for a successful fundraising dinner if I'm a small nonprofit doing one of my first ones? Jack, we'll start with you.
Well, Tip O'Neill said all politics is local. I raise money from my friends, for people that I would like to become my friends. And so I'm not interested in how many people come. I'm interested in the quality of those people who I invite. And there's a lot of these events where we all give out the name tags and we all hand out a program and so on and so forth. But I know Barry's reputation. You know, nobody knows it. He just went to their home, or he went and had breakfast with them, and he came out with $10 million. So, not that dinners are overrated, but dinners are only one piece of it, and they need to be, for the most part, filled with people who have the ability to make a difference.
Kathleen, you've done a few of these over the years. Any tips?
Yeah, one interesting one that we did, and it was really, again, around bringing our faith community together, was the priests of the diocese, the good guys, got really hurt more than a lot because their brother priests with the scandal impacted their ability to even feel like they could go out and wear a collar. Okay. So there was a decision 9 years ago to do a celebration of the priesthood, to celebrate the priests, because it only took a few bad apples to put a really bad, blanket on the great work of these men. So they had a celebration of the priesthood dinner. And it was not a fundraiser. It was a pure celebration of the faithful from the parishes to come together to basically say, we love you. And we love what you do, and we love that you care for us. And through you, we get the sacraments and the saving graces of Jesus Christ. So that dinner was about 1,000 people, and everybody came together. And then people said, oh, is there going to be another one next year? Well, they said, well, let's do another one. And this time it was going to benefit the priests' retirement and their health benefits, okay? So we started doing it as a fundraiser. This past year, so it started to grow, and now this past year it was 1,600 people. We had Roma Downey. She did the Bible. She did Ben-Hur, and for any of you who have never seen the Bible on the History Channel, watch it. Doesn't matter what your religion is, it is an amazing series. So she came to speak, and she was a witness basically a witness on her faith journey from Ireland. And the 1,600 people is more of a community dinner. We keep hovering around $1.6 million for the fund, and that's great. But the goal of the dinner is to bring everyone together. Next year, we're already planning in the 10th year, we have an outstanding speaker to be named or disclosed, but there isn't going to be a place large enough for us to hold this event, which is huge. I have seen priests cry. We did the video, and some of the priests, we tell their stories of what they've been through, all on, in terms of their care and their vocation to give their life to Christ and to their community. And we've captured some pretty real things that have been really moving to a lot of people. So people leave there feeling better about being Catholic. And I hate to say it, but there was a lot of people that didn't want to be Catholic. They were, and there's a pride now that we can be proud again to be Catholic, because we know that through it all, we have each other. So this event is going to be larger every year. Whether we ever cap 1.6, it doesn't matter, because it's a parish event. They come, $150, a ticket, a table is $5,000. It's not there really to make money. More to what Barry said, it was to build community, and the great incredible benefit is obviously we're raising money for their health and retirement. So just an example.
So, Barry, dinners, do they raise money or do they raise friends?
They better be raising friends, because I don't think they really necessarily raise a whole lot of money. I think friends it's a great opportunity to tell your story. And as you said before, I mean, it's who's filling the room. You want to see that there are people who they respect. Forget about status. People who they deeply respect who are there, because those folks care about what you're doing. And if those people care about what you're doing, you must be doing something right and doing something important. So it's an opportunity to tell your story. That's the most important thing. An umbrella charity like CJP, if there's not personality attached to this thing, something human attached to this thing, then it becomes invisible. So people have said, you don't raise a lot of money with these dinners, it costs money, why are you doing them? Right. And the answer is that it's an opportunity for people to be seen, to see each other, to know that it's important to lots of people, and most important, to tell your story. So just a couple of practical things. There's never been a dinner that's been too short. No one ever came to me and said, Barry, that dinner was so short, couldn't you make it a little longer?
So true. So true.
Related to that is, Barry, couldn't you have spoken for like another half hour? That never happened. That never happened either. I have seen one dinner where the length of the dinner actually benefited the fundraising. The other night we were together at a dinner, right? And they didn't feed people. At a Jewish dinner, you could never get away with this. And it's like, and it's getting like to 9 o'clock, and he says, no dinner till I raise another $100,000.
Nobody leaves this room.
I've never seen anybody do it better than you. It was entertaining, it was interesting, and at the end you lost a little weight. So it was like,
Those rear doors will open when I'm done.
That's great.
Josh, some tips?
Yeah, so sort of just carrying on what's already been said. First and foremost, you want a brief program, but powerful program. Get someone who represents your mission up there to speak and move the people. And that's always, as Barry said, it can never be brief enough. You know, for our annual dinner, corporate dinner in February, we always want everybody out of there by between 8:35 and 8:40. We want people in their car, they look at their clock and it's not even 9 yet, and they're like, oh wow, I'll go to this again because I'm out before 9. So, and I'm gonna get home and see the second half of the Celtics game. So it's, but that's important because nobody, as Barry said, no dinner is ever short enough. So that's a big thing. Another thing that's important to us, and it carries on what Jack was saying, is if you can pre-sell sponsorships, all your sponsorships, raise the money up front, or most of it up front from your evangelists, your good friends, and carries the dinner. And then, you know, because of length, and because if you can get those pre-selling and get your friends who love your mission, then it's probably, if you can avoid an auction or a raffle or an honoree, you should avoid it because it prolongs the dinner. People tend to be frustrated, and it just it makes the dinner shorter and more powerful. You want people, again, to walk away saying, you know what, I might come back to this next year because I'm out at a reasonable time. And they had, you know, this young man or this young woman who spoke, who grew up in a club, who's doing this now, or represents your, I know everybody probably has plenty of stories that represent their mission. So those are the advice I'd give.
So Kathleen,
I wanted to add one thing. So 1,600 people at the World Trade Center, and it's over at 9 o'clock. So I've been to a lot of nonprofits that are smaller than what the church is, and it's going on until 10:30. I mean, it's brutal, okay? Because the people who you want to come are going to 5 other dinners that month. So I totally hearken that, and I know if we can get 1,600 people and we're done at 9, it can get done. So I just mentioned that as a practical reality.
You know, funny story, just to carry on what Barry said. Sorry to interrupt, Bob, but I was at a dinner with my dad in New York, and it was a Jewish-based dinner, and there was a lot of speaking. Then at 9:15, they go, okay, now's the dinner break, and there were still 3 speakers to go. My dad looked at me and he said, we're getting out of here now. So
And you just
it was
lost,
brutal.
I'm shocked he lasted that long.
Me too.
yeah.
Well, he was on the dais, so he was. But then he took off, so he kept looking at me. We were texting each other, and I knowing him the way you do, I don't think he cared. He's like, "We're leaving." I was like, "Okay."
Yeah. Wow.
So Kathleen, I'm a smallish nonprofit, and I'm thinking about my first capital campaign. Never done it before, but I'm thinking about a capital campaign, maybe to raise $500,000, $1 million to do some big project. What are the kind of questions you'd ask me as I pose that proposition to you?
I'd start on the operational level, your infrastructure. I'm working with a lot of nonprofits that want to do some great things, but their database isn't even ready, okay? So go look at your operations and see whether your database is in good shape. Has it been cleaned out? Can you track any renewals? Can you segregate your top donors to your dollar donors? What do you know about them just on pure data? And I've seen a lot of organizations try to go do very philanthropically lofty things because a capital campaign is about vision. It is about where you want to be, and it's about taking that donor with you to be at that new place, right? At that new vision that you have that's going to enhance yours. But they don't start with a foundation that's at all sound. So if you don't have the foundation in terms of the donor base, the data, stewardship ready, all of the mechanisms that should be required, don't do it. Wait and get your house in order and then do it, because it will be ill-fated. And you also know that after a capital campaign, you should have created even a greater goodwill, an awareness of where your vision's going, which would attract more people to your organization. But if you're not set up properly and have everything in place, even staff, do you have the right staff that can do this? look first inside is my advice before you go and do that. We're in the quiet phase of a campaign, and you would think at the Archdiocese of Boston we'd be a well-oiled machine. We are becoming a more well-oiled machine for sure, but it's taken us 2 years to get to that point because we looked very hard first to say, okay, we're not quite where we need to be before we launch this. So look inside first would be my advice.
Jack, what would you add to that for a smallish organization starting a campaign? What would you ask them, tell them?
So this may not be exact answer to your question about a capital campaign, but then again, I haven't answered any of your questions exactly.
I never actually expected them.
There's certain measurements that people relate to. And so I'm going to just share a story that is kind of one of my personal favorites about Ted Williams. Ted Williams is the last person ever to have a batting average over 400 in a season at the end of the season. And he did that in 1941. That's like 77 years ago, 76 years ago. No one has been able to hit over 400. He was 406 in 1941. And today, if you can hit over 300, the owners will pay you $10 million and ask no questions. So in the case of Ted Williams, there's been movies, there's been books, there's been magazine articles, documentaries. You could fill this room with one copy of everything that's been written or said or produced about Ted Williams. But you won't find one book or one article about the fact that he was wrong 6 out of 10 times. And so what the hell does that mean? What that means to me is the measurement for success is how many you won. So for example, when I was helping to build Hill Holiday beginning in 1968, 49 years ago, we were 4 founders and we had no business. In fact, most of our friends thought we had no business going into business. And we built it into the largest in New England. And what people measured was that we were the largest in New England. What they didn't measure was that I made and failed and lost more pitches than the next 3 competitors. So because they didn't keep that stat, they didn't think I was chopped liver, they thought I was a winner. So what's the lesson of that? The lesson is call on as many people as you can and ask them. And it's like the old life insurance thing, First call on your family, and then call on your extended family, then call on your neighbors, and then call on your friends. But eventually, you're going to call on some strangers. You've worked up the courage, you get it. And the beauty here in America, still, is that they say no in one of 3 ways. They hang up the phone, they slam the door, or they say you can't come. But they don't shoot you. So you brush yourself off and you go and you kiss the next frog. And so it's, you gotta just grind it out, just stay with it. And so when it comes to a capital campaign, be sure that you understand that people give to winners. People give to things they care about. And people want to be more involved in what they care about than in the past. The old model was give to the community chest, the United Way. The United Way is very successful. But there's a lot of people that want a little more direct involvement. They want to see it, they want to feel it, they want to touch it. So before I'd launch a capital campaign, I'd take somebody to camp. I'd take somebody to the schools and see these little kids running around in their uniforms. I'd take them to whatever the cause was that I was raising money for at that time. And once they believe, it's all over. It's just a matter of what the size of the check's going to be.
It's very helpful. Thank you. Why don't I, in the time we have remaining, why don't I turn it to our audience and any questions for our panel? Yes?
Maureen Timor from the Cat Connection.
The cat connection. I told you the cat connection. And damn proud of it?
And we have the cat, Belmont Savings.
Oh, that's the Lord's work.
A question for Kathleen.
Okay.
You mentioned your meeting. Who did you invite to come to that meeting? I think that's key. Everyone has talked about getting the right people.
Sure. So the breakfast about the teen center, yes. So we started with the Board of Catholic Charities. We always start with the board. So we invited the board first, asked them to gave them the charge to bring 1 to 2 people. And then we looked at at the business leadership in the Boston Business Journal and other places and said, okay. We also looked at who gave to the Boys and Girls Club from one of their event, pieces that they had, and said, well, if they're interested in the Boys and Girls Club in Dorchester, they may be interested in this. So we made connections that way. I mean, the one good thing about dinners is the people who look at who is sponsoring the dinners are the development people. I mean, I work with 3 development people, and they have more. Every time there's a dinner, they've got them in their office looking at who's on the list, who's the sponsors, right? So that gave us at least a predisposition to knowing that they might be interested in youth services. And that's what this is. And the dinner, the breakfast, what, 40 people came, maybe? Wasn't huge.
Thank you.
Liz? Sir?
Hi, Peter Hamilton, Conley Search Group. Thank you. What advice do you have for the leaders of these nonprofits in an age when there's a lot of turnover in development staff? What do you have? What advice do you have for us who want to sustain and grow our organizations? What have you learned in your time in these organizations?
In terms of recruitment?
Retention, incentivizing people.
Josh?
Well, hey, Peter, I think when you get new people, whether it's your development team or whatever, I just, the best way to engage them is, or to hopefully retain them is, I know for me personally, I like to walk and speak to all of them, get their advice on little things, what they're working on, or even bigger things, and just try to make them feel like, I hate to go back to this line, but we really feel at our organization, we want the staff to feel like they matter, like the kids in the buildings and the family do. We want our donors, our board, et cetera. So I think trying to engage them as much as possible in what they're working on, see how I can be supportive of their work, or even get their opinion on other organizational things, and that's it. But
Barry, do you have a reaction to that?
I think it's a major. It's a huge challenge. I mean, I think it's important for staff to feel like they're part of an organization that's successful, that's doing well, that's respected. And in the Jewish community, where you're kind of out there all the time, it's important when you run into somebody and you go out. I work for CJP, that they go, that's so impressive. They're doing such great work. There are communities where that doesn't get said, and then it's much more difficult. On the other hand, the other part of this thing is that you're trying to train people up to the highest potential level they can be, and they're fundraisers at a highly successful fundraising organization. There can be a lot of people coming after them,
Yeah.
and that provides its own. So when a person leaves, you say, I'm very proud that we've turned somebody out to give leadership to an organization. You have to have a system that enables you to keep as much knowledge intact as you can, in spite of the inevitability that there's going to be some turnover. But again, give people a feeling of respect. The CEO should be saying nice things to them when they do great things, and make them feel like, I feel like most of our staff would walk through walls for the community. That doesn't mean they're going to stay there forever, but it means that while they're there, they're going to do their job.
Jack?
So I think, just to add to what Barry said, I think once someone falls in love with the mission, and once they believe it and act it and work it, you have to recognize that development people, the best of them, are like starting pitchers. And you better take care of them. You better respect their worth and pay them accordingly. I mean, it's a percentage game. If someone can raise $1 million, they're worth more than someone that can raise $100. And if they can raise $5 million, they're worth more than someone who raises $1 million. And that's just the law of the jungle. But you have to, it can't be on faith or love alone. It has to be some mutual respect.
It's an interesting challenge because you don't have stock options, restricted shares, the things that public companies have. So the retention has to be being wedded to the mission. I'll just add one thought in recruiting that I learned from a very smart person a long time ago. The best question you can ask when you're hiring somebody is, what do you love? And then just stop talking and let them talk. And if your mission or your job description or the things that you need that person to do don't turn up in that conversation about what they love, you got the wrong person. You can't get them to love it later on.
Yeah.
Yes? In the orange dress?
They gave me the mic because I raised my
I'm
hand
sorry.
before, but
Sorry.
That's not an orange dress, by the way.
I can wait, but I have my hand. Okay. My name is Mark Campert. I'm the executive director of the Youth Development Organization in Lawrence, and I believe all of you know of Lawrence. You may have seen the news that on Tuesday the police chief implemented a curfew for the public spaces after a rash of shootings recently. Things are tough in the community, and my question, I took a lot from what Kathleen said about getting people to care about the Cape Verdean youth that they may not otherwise pay attention to. But I think geography plays a role as well, and Boston is flush with resources and proximity to a lot of need and good causes. It's a little bit harder to get people to look further away. Lawrence is also in Essex County, and Essex County is outside the catchment area of the Boston Foundation. It's another challenge that I've been having, trying to attract attention to the city. I was able to secure a $400,000 grant this year from a New York-based charitable trust, but I'm still not getting money from Boston. So maybe if you have any tips about geography or trying to build a bridge between Boston and some of the gateway cities, that would be helpful. And I do have a second point, just that Mr. Kraft, I heard you wrote letters to the 40 under 40 this year, but I didn't get one last year, so.
Yeah, I didn't. I know. I say I read the ones that are involved with us. Marcus from the Lawrence Club should have written you one, right, Marcus?
You see, so we're going to have to talk about that, but thank you.
Well, congratulations on your award.
Yeah.
So thoughts on getting attention for cities that aren't in the immediate Boston area?
So one possible thought, when Kathleen and I first got involved in raising money for the Catholic schools back 10 years ago, we went to the parishes and we asked to see their databases. And the nuns who taught were gone, and the databases didn't exist. There was no database from the 40s and the 50s and so on. So we set about going and having a cup of coffee with the one person we knew who went to St. Peter's in Dorchester, and asked him, do you know anybody else who was successful in this? And he mentioned a fellow's name and went to see the fellow. And there were some amazing success stories that came out of Lawrence before all this. And you got to figure out who those are. And I'll be willing to bet that 8 of them live in Andover right now. And you need to find out which 8. And there's 3 of them that remember growing up in Lawrence. And it's still local. You know, you're not going to go to where I live in Brookline and get a lot of people to be excited about what's going on in Lawrence, because there's things going on all over the world. This is personal. This is your fight. And there are people in and around that area. And the first step is to go to the assessor's office and find out who lived in the most expensive houses in Andover, and then cross-reference those with the folks, which ones of them grew up in Lawrence. And you'll find 4 people who will help you.
Just
I
as- Yeah,
sorry,
go,
Kat.
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Jack's so right that when we built the club in Chelsea, that's exactly what we did. There's so many people that came out of Chelsea that have roots there that had done well, that when we had to track them down, not only in Boston, someone in Florida, and they all contributed, invested some significantly in the building. But it was exactly what Jack just said. We did a lot of homework to track them all down.
It's a lot of work. Yeah, no, I was just going to add to that because we raised $13 million for Brockton, okay, to revitalize 2 schools. There isn't $13 million in Brockton now, but it was all connections, and it took phone calls, and really, it's a lot of work, but it's worth it because there are people there or from there. It was a thriving, incredible city at one point in time, and so.
But with the amount of census records out there today and computer records, I mean, you can find out where everybody was and is if you spend the time at it. So. Now I'll go to my lady in orange.
Thank you. Stephanie Anderson Garrett from the Community Builders. We're a nonprofit real estate developer based here in Boston, and we work in 30 cities.
Oh, wow.
Just about all of you have talked about using the stories of the folks who benefit from your work as part of your outreach. Can you share any advice or experience on how to bring those voices and those experiences forward in a way that is compelling for donors and respectful of the individuals who are being asked to, open themselves up in that way?
Barry, do you have a thought on that?
Again, it's about the relationships that, you have the relationships with the clients. You know who they are, and the people who work directly with them know a lot about what the most compelling stories are. And then I think it's all about, preparation and screening. Just make sure that you're not putting people in a spot where they don't want to be, and really listen to what they're saying. And if you do all that, most of the time it'll work. Because it's just it's their own personal story. It's got to touch other people's hearts. So, if you do the preparation, I think it should be fine, but you know who the people are.
One of the offices within the Archdiocese is called the Office of Urban Planning. It may be similar to some of the work that you're doing. We do low-income housing, mixed housing. We have homes for women from sex trafficking. No one knows where those homes are, but they are in the city. So they do a lot of great work, and they've done it 2 ways at a recent event that I've seen. One is they did a video very sensitively to what this family who had been homeless for a long time finally felt about the gift that they had in terms of being able to now have a home. And then you can always have what I consider a witness talk relative to someone who's a beneficiary of your work at the event or writing something. I just, to Barry's point, it takes prep. You don't want to really, you want to be very sensitive to their story and their comfort level on what they want to share. You have to have, because you have a relationship with them. So those are the 2 most compelling ways that we've done it. If they don't want to be live, they're nervous, we'll do a video, we'll do a short segment or something. And then also, if they're willing, we'll post sometimes stories if we're going to, use the internet and social media in terms of an awareness of the work that we're doing.
Yes, please, right here.
My name is Jordan McKinley. I'm with the St. Boniface Haiti Foundation. Mm-hmm. We run a hospital and mobile clinics in southern Haiti, but our organization was founded out of a parish in Quincy. Mm-hmm. So we're still based here, but all of our programs happen in Haiti. And I totally agree with you, and it resonates with what many of you have said about when we get people to Haiti and we get them seeing our work, they're in. Yeah. But a little different from driving Mayor Mino out to Long Island or taking people down to a suburb of Boston or down to Dorchester. It's hard to get people to Haiti, and a lot of people don't want to come. So I'm wondering what you think is the next best alternative if you can't bring them to see your work.
Sounds like a marketing question to me.
Well, we also have the 3rd largest population of Haitians here in Boston. So I'm just going to throw that out as
I think if And I understand that because I'm on the board of Partners in Health, also doing a lot of work on Haiti, 50% of their budget. And it's tough to get people to go to Haiti. So bring Haiti to them. Bring the story, you know this, but bring some folks who are witness to what is taking place down there, the devastation, the lack of forests, the lack of clean water, the lack of good health facilities, the lack of government, and bring the story to them, but make sure that that person or the family or the group that comes in knows how to tell the story. You just can't, you know this, you just can't pick a couple of folks. You have to pick the sales, the ones that are going to lock this down.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much, and I just wanted to say thank you to the four of you for being here, because there are no four busier people in Massachusetts, and you're here with us this morning, so it means a lot, and thank you so much. My name is Erin Murphy Rafferty, and I'm the CEO of the Wonder Fund, and my question is about collaboration. One of the biggest questions I get when I'm in fundraising meetings is, who are you working with? The population that you serve, which we serve children involved with the Department of Children and Families and foster children. There are a lot of organizations who serve these same folks, and are you working with them? And we are, and that's a strategic priority for us, but one thing we've learned in this process is that there's a lot of reticence about working with other not-for-profits because we're all competing for the same dollars. And so I'd love your perspective on collaborations and your work that have worked really well, and any insight you have on that topic. Thank you.
Well, I know for us at Boys and Girls Clubs of Boston, how are you, Aaron? You know, our feeling, whether it's the staff that work in the communities to our main offices, there's no way in hell we have all the answers or can provide what we do, which is providing opportunity to every kid who walks in the door. So we make it part of our culture to partner with as many nonprofits as possible. So I know it's about 200 nonprofits and for-profits, from as big as Mass General Hospital, which runs all our organization-wide health program, to Greater Boston PFLAG, which has set up some LGBTQ groups in a couple of our clubs, youth groups, to the Children's Room, which does counseling. So we feel like if we're really going to be that place that offers every opportunity to kids, we're not doing our job if we're not partnering. And we do hear that a lot. Oh, you know, I know a lot of us at Boys and Girls Club get frustrated when we hear, oh, people in the city don't partner. And we don't say anything. We just kind of say, well, we'll show you what we're going to do. We're not going to tell you. So it's an important part of our culture.
It's another sales call. You're pitching a slightly different product than just asking for money or asking for collaboration. At Camp Harborview, Sharon McNally, who's our president, she's got collaboration going with 15 different groups. And it's just another sales call, and it's an opportunity for them, you know, for example, whether it's, I think it's courageous sailing, where handicapped children have an opportunity to take advantage of our sailing program because they work with them to make sure that they have the same opportunities that the kids that don't have those handicaps do.
And I think the donors like to see that. They like to see organizations packaging up, as opposed to the 3 dinners, it's the 1 dinner, as opposed to the 3 asks, it's the 1 ask. And donors like that kind of collaboration.
I think if you also don't think about the donors, not in any disrespect here, but you're here to say, how am I enhancing the work of my nonprofit? And if you think about it that way, the collaborations become, Sharon McNally isn't worrying about Sail Courageous and the donors. All she really wants is to be able to provide a sailing experience for handicapped kids. There's a Camp Sunset Point camp down in Hull run by Catholic Charities. Well, there was a donor who said, I want to help handicapped kids because I have 3 handicapped children in my family. So we collaborated with ARC, South Shore ARC. I'm an advocate of South Shore ARC, huge proponent. This was not a donor discussion. This was a, how do we help serve? And also, we can't also do mission creep because our camp isn't really set up for handicapped kids. So what do we have to do? it's, I think you have to look at it a little differently, and I think the future for a lot of nonprofits and when we are going to have to collaborate, State Street did a big thing on that with their connections. So I think donors will see it, but don't let that get in the way. First, see what you need to do that enhances your mission, and then honestly, good things happen.
Success is a team sport.
Yeah, yeah.
Take it.
That's how Josh and I built the Patriots.
You know, Bill, when Belichick's on the headphones, it's Jack that's upstairs.
Barry.
It's no one else.
Barry, did you want to add?
Just to say, I would even take it further. I like it when people come to town and introduce a new charity of one kind or another, and somebody says you ought to go talk to the people at CJP, they know a lot about it. I want to help them raise money.
Right.
I don't view them as competitors, because at the end of the day, it's their donors that are going to say, how did you get set up? And they'll say, why, CJP was really helpful. Right. And that's just going to enhance our reputation on the fundraising side. And then, of course, actually collaborating with people around the programs makes sure that you do the best job you can.
So I don't want to be that event that goes after 9:30, so I'll just do one more question. This gentleman here in the end.
Thank you so much. Chris Cherko, I'm from North Shore Elder Services up in Danvers. One question I had is, what's your feeling with a lot of these new, online fundraising campaigns like a Giving Tuesday? I know at the nonprofit I used to work at, did pretty well with it, but last year I noticed, I'm getting 20 or 30 of these on that day now and find myself deleting them, in my inbox before I even open any of them. And we had basically no return from it this year. And I didn't know if what you saw as the future for that sort of campaign. Thank you.
Any experience with that?
So it used to be that the life for a product was longer than it is today. Everybody's got a road race or a bike ride or climbing tall buildings or whatever. You have to come up with new products all the time. And those new products, you needn't assume that they'll last for 5 years, because they won't. They'll last a minute, or a New York minute, which is even shorter. But you got to go in. You got to be as good as you can, and there always has to be some new thing that's coming along, a new offering, a new way of doing it.
Well, thank you all, and thank our wonderful panel for being with us this